Since childhood, every book or game our protagonist owned came from worlds beyond our own. Fantasy, swords, magic, he loved all of it. He threw his hand up in celebration, proud that he had actually reached the ending. After hours of grinding, the game finally congratulated him for clearing the story and asked if he wanted to save his clear time on the server. He picked yes without hesitation. The Legend of the Seven Heroes 2, the second installment of a massively popular fantasy RPG. The game followed a familiar setup, a school story centered on descendants of heroes who once defeated the Demon King. In this sequel, things went off script. The hero's own friend killed a young girl known as a saint, throwing the kingdom into chaos, and ended with the emperor ordering the hero to subdue that same friend. Then it cut off, saving the continuation for the third installment and leaving players stuck with questions. While scrolling through comments on his phone, he noticed others had already finished the story too, then picked up the controller again. For now, replaying the game felt like the move. A prompt suddenly appeared, asking if he wanted to start a special story using the demon sword summoning skill. He paused. He couldn't remember any character who used that skill in the main story. Still curious, he selected yes. That was when everything stopped making sense. His surroundings flashed completely white. He felt his strength vanish, like his body had been unplugged. Before he could process anything, he disappeared. When awareness returned, an elderly woman stood in front of him, commenting that the young master seemed full of energy. Another woman nearby agreed and expressed relief that he appeared healthy and would grow up well. The protagonist had no idea what was going on. He soon realized he had woken up as a baby, sitting in a tub of water. His vision was blurry. He couldn't tell if this was a dream or something much more real. Then a memory hit him. The game's question about starting a special story with the demon sword summoning skill. The realization landed hard. Something about this situation felt way too familiar. Getting transported into another world. Getting dropped into a game. The kind of thing he had read about 100 times. Except now, it was happening to him. The elderly woman eventually carried him and asked about his name. His mother received him and chose one she had already prepared. He was named Lynn Ashton. That name existed inside the Legend of the Seven Heroes too. Not as a side character. Not as background. Lynn Ashton was the main culprit who caused the kingdom's chaos. The former best friend who betrayed the hero and the dangerous figure suspected of being the mastermind. Now reborn into the game's world, he realized he hadn't become the hero. He hadn't become a side character either. He had become the future problem. While practicing his sword skills, Lin pushed forward with everything he had. His father quickly stepped in and set him back down, correcting his form and reminding him that pointless jumping only left him wide open. Lin accepted the correction without protest. Once he was on the ground, his father checked if he was all right and called an end to the day's training. Even though his body felt stiff and heavy, his father brushed off the complaint and praised his effort instead. More than 7 years had passed since Lin found himself in this world. He now lived in the western military nation of the Elfin continent, known as the Leomel Empire, specifically in a quiet, unnamed village. Looking back, the beginning had been rough. The shock of waking up in a different world was not something he accepted easily. Still, spending months stuck in a baby's body forced him to adjust. He had kept his situation completely hidden from his parents. No one knew he had transmigrated. The only strange thing that appeared alongside him was a status screen that occasionally showed up from his wrist. Unlike the version in the game, this one didn't display levels or clear stats like strength or magic power. It felt more grounded, more like real life. Even so, one skill stood out: demon sword summoning. That skill was unfamiliar. He had never heard of it during his time playing the game. In the original system, players could merge 3 existing skills to create something new. There were also unique skills, abilities reserved only for specific individuals. As he examined the status screen, it became clear that demon sword summoning fit into that unique category. The moment that thought settled, a sword suddenly rose from the ground in front of him. At the moment, he could only summon the demon sword of wood. It was small, underwhelming even. According to the description, the more he summoned and used the demon sword, the higher his proficiency would rise. The system also mentioned that meeting certain conditions would unlock additional types of demon swords. Even if he raised both the wood element sword and the summoning technique to level 2, the next unlock would only be a metal-type sword. Progress would take time. Every summon also consumed his magic power. If he ran out completely, a brutal headache would hit, and in extreme cases he could lose consciousness. Avoiding that meant daily practice. There was no shortcut. He had to steadily build his magic power and control. If this were still just a game, leveling up would have been much easier. One day, while he was checking his status screen, his father suddenly entered and asked if he was awake. Startled, Lin immediately dismissed the screen before it could be seen. His father picked him up without noticing anything unusual. Having this power confirmed one thing for Lin. His situation was directly connected to the game's world. That meant the future waiting for him, the one tied to the character he had become, was something he needed to avoid at all costs. Even if the worst outcome couldn't be fully prevented, he needed enough strength to protect himself. Training had to start now, and learning everything about this world was just as important. At 7 years old, Lin began moving more actively. When his father returned from hunting one day, Lin greeted him and was soon asked if he wanted to begin proper sword training. His father allowed him to choose any wooden practice sword from the storeroom. Lin accepted immediately. His father then told him to come forward with everything he had. The sudden instruction caught him off guard, but his father admitted he had never formally taught anyone before. This was simply how he had been trained growing up. Lin accepted the method. Quietly, he activated the demon sword of wood without drawing attention. With that hidden advantage, he moved in to begin. He dashed forward and attacked. His father dodged smoothly and encouraged him to keep going until he physically couldn't continue. Lin pushed on without hesitation. Despite the surprising physical strength this body had, it was still the body of a 7-year-old. He didn't even last 30 minutes in his first real session. Eventually, he collapsed onto the ground, completely drained. His father praised his effort for a first attempt and suggested heading home. Lin expressed his thanks and asked his father to go ahead. He planned to follow after recovering enough energy to stand again. Once alone, Lin checked his status screen. His proficiency had increased. Using the demon sword of wood during training was finally paying off. From that point on, his daily routine settled into a steady pattern. Mornings were spent studying. Afternoons were reserved for sword training with his father. There was also the matter of demon stones, items taken from defeated monsters. In theory, they were supposed to help improve demon sword proficiency. However, the demon stone is no reaction at all. It seemed useless unless the monster had been hunted by him personally. Unlike the game he knew, this world clearly wasn't handing out easy rewards. If he wanted results, he had to treat everything seriously. Another month passed before he noticed. During training, his father commented that Lin's movements had improved compared to before. The praise didn't last long. Without warning, his father rushed forward and knocked him off balance. Lin went down immediately. His father pointed out that he was losing balance too easily and needed to focus more strength in his core. After helping him up, his father asked if he was all right and announced the end of training for the day. Lin tried to refuse, insisting he could continue just a little longer. His father advised against pushing too far. Overworking himself would only lead to injury. He reminded Lin that he was already training to his limit every single day and that his progress had been impressive. Lin slowly got back to his feet. His father suggested resting before dinner and walked off. Lin thanked him sincerely as he left. Once alone, Lin checked his status screen again. The demon's sword summoning technique was close to leveling up. Just a few more days. He lay on the ground with a smile on his face. In his mind, it was fine even if leveling up was hard. He was a gamer, after all, and he was used to it. At home, his mother Milieu gently held his hand and noticed another blister forming. Lin reassured her that he was fine and that he genuinely enjoyed learning swordsmanship. She understood. The Ashton family had a long history as knights protecting the village, and seeing Lin take interest in swords felt natural. Still, her feelings towards swords were complicated. It wasn't hatred, it was fear. She explained that even as a child, Lin's father had always been obsessed with swords. He was brave to the point of recklessness and never hesitated to face monsters. That same bravery had saved her many times. But she couldn't help worrying that one day, that courage might turn into the very reason he would be badly hurt. Lin stayed quiet as she spoke. She clarified that she respected her husband deeply. The monsters he hunted provided income and food for the village. His work supported not just their family, but the entire community. Right then, his father appeared from behind and reassured her. He insisted there was nothing to worry about. He considered himself strong enough to handle the monsters around them, and mentioned he was being more careful than before. Above all else, his family's happiness mattered most to him. Milieu was visibly moved by his words. Later, in his room, Lin lay in bed thinking about family. In his previous life, his parents had divorced early, and he had lived with his mother. Over time, their conversations faded until they barely spoke. By adulthood, she stopped coming home altogether. He remained grateful that she had supported his university education. Looking back, he figured there must have been struggles he never fully understood. The thought lingered as sleep slowly took him. Morning arrived, and training resumed as usual. Lin pushed himself until he collapsed again. His father called for an end and promised they would continue the next day. Lin accepted. Evenings passed into mornings, and the routine continued. His schedule stayed consistent. Sit-ups with his father's help. Sword practice until exhaustion. Study sessions with books. Dinner together as a family. Then rest. Repeat. Another morning brought another training session. As usual, Lin eventually fell to the ground. His father asked if he was all right and suggested stopping for the day. Lin tried to get up and insisted he could still continue. Then he felt something unusual. His father immediately noticed the change and asked what was wrong, wondering if he had hurt himself somewhere. Lin brushed it off and mentioned that his body suddenly felt lighter. As he started moving, he dashed straight toward his father and swung without warning. The speed caught him off guard, and it caught his father off guard too. His father reacted with clear excitement and urged him to go again without resting. Lin agreed and immediately rushed forward once more, this time with even more speed. He couldn't believe what he was feeling. The pace of his movement felt unreal, and the strength in his arms kept rising as they traded blows. Meanwhile, his father tried to make sense of what just happened. One moment his son was normal, and the next he had clearly leveled up mid-training. The exchange pushed further until Lin's strike finally snapped his father's wooden sword clean in half. That was the moment everything clicked for his father. He started putting the pieces together, but before he could fully lay it out, he dodged Lin's last swing, grabbed him, lifted him straight into the air, and proudly celebrated the result. It had become obvious to him that Lin was a skill bearer. Milieu noticed the sudden commotion and asked what was going on. The father explained as best as he could, making it clear that he didn't have a skill himself and couldn't be completely certain. Still, the timing lined up too perfectly. Lin had likely gained a level in his skill through training, and that was the only reasonable explanation for the sudden boost in strength and speed. His father, he became convinced that Lin shouldn't stay stuck in a small village anymore. In his view, someone with that kind of potential belonged in the capital, building a reputation and eventually becoming a knight. His mother joined in with supportive excitement, curious about what kind of skill he had awakened. His father added that if they had more money, they could head to the town's church right away and officially check the skill's name and details. Lin responded calmly and pushed back on the idea. He didn't see any real need to have it checked, pointing out that not knowing the exact name of the skill wasn't going to end his life. His father questioned whether he was serious, since most kids would be extremely curious in that situation. His mother wondered if he was being a little too indifferent about the whole thing. He explains that a rare ability like demon sword summoning could easily bring unnecessary attention and complications. Keeping things simple felt safer. The room fell into an awkward silence after that. Lin then expressed what he really wanted. If possible, he preferred to live peacefully and quietly in the village. Instead of chasing fame as a knight, he wanted to become his father's successor. Hunting monsters together and increasing their income sounded far more appealing than dealing with the chaos of the capital. If the worst ever came, he would also be able to protect his father. For the past 7 years, life had been better than anything he remembered from before. That happiness came from the two people standing right in front of him. Deep down, he accepted that the person he used to be was gone. As Lin, someone new had already taken shape. All he really wanted was simple. He hoped the three of them could stay together and live long, steady lives. His father had no immediate response. Instead, he pulled Lin into a tight hug, with his mother quickly joining in. The three of them stood there together until his father finally told him to stop acting like a brat, though the tone carried more warmth than scolding. Lin saw his current life as something close to his second run. This time, he planned to value every moment with his family. He also intended to avoid the future filled with despair that he remembered and live differently from the version of Lin in the game. Still, those quiet dreams would eventually fall apart. In just a few years, everything would begin to shift. Somewhere ahead waited a girl he was never supposed to meet, along with someone he was meant to kill. The future would move in ways that didn't make sense, pushing against logic and against him. For now, though, the present Lin had no awareness of what was coming. Far from the village, inside the Leomel Empire's northern city, an aging knight named Vios approached a young lady and checked if something was wrong. She simply noted that nothing had happened and that she was only bored now that training was finished. Vios looked around and saw his men sprawled on the ground. He admitted that after seeing this, it was clear his men were no longer fit to serve as her practice partners. The lady pointed out that the same could be said for him and asked where he was headed in full armor. She wondered if something had happened within the territory. Vios explained that he had been ordered by the master to patrol the northwest region. The lady commented that sending someone of his level must mean the situation was serious. Vios confirmed it. He had received orders to hunt down a beast, and from what he heard, it was a troublesome one. The lady repeated the word. Meanwhile, in the Northwest Territory, Lin reviewed his status screen and noted that 3 years had passed since his first level up. With Demon Sword Summoning now at level 2, he could already see the requirements for level 3. The numbers on the screen didn't help his mood. After 3 years, he had reached 659, and the next requirement of 1500 still felt distant. Training every single day had never been possible anyway. Some days were spent working the fields or preparing for winter, leaving him no time to even hold a sword. Short training sessions only raised proficiency by 1 point at a time. Not far away, his grandmother Rig waved and pointed out that he was up early. Lin greeted her back with a simple good morning. Even with the slow progress, his current strength already felt more than enough for a peaceful life in the village. Rig mentioned that his father had been bragging about him again the day before, talking about how the young master might become a great knight in the capital someday. Lin accepted the praise, but made it clear he had no intention of leaving the village. Before the conversation could go any further, a group of mounted men appeared over the hill. Rig quickly urged Lin to head back home, recognizing them as people from Lord Baron's side. Lin paused in confusion as they approached. The riders moved straight toward his family's house. When they arrived, Vios stepped forward and politely apologized for the sudden intrusion. Roy told them not to worry about the sudden visit and calmly asked what brought them to the village. From a short distance away, Lin watched the armored men in silence. The Baron's servants gave off a stiff, formal vibe that made the whole scene feel heavier than usual. In his mind, he recalled that the Baron was the noble in charge of the entire territory. Under the feudal system, every knight served a higher-ranking noble. Roy himself had been assigned by the Baron to protect this village. For Lin, this was the first time seeing fully armored knights up close, and the sight alone made him wonder if something serious had happened. Roy accepted the scroll handed to him by Vios and read it carefully. After finishing, he asked whether a large amount of damage had already been caused by the beast near their area. Vios confirmed that several villages had been attacked and that there were casualties. Witnesses described the creature as a critter-type beast that moved as fast as the wind. Vios explained that his group had been patrolling the region to subjugate the beast. So far, they had found no solid leads. They wanted Roy to join the vigilance team and help strengthen their patrols. Lin processed the information quietly. A beast serious enough to require a subjugation unit immediately raised concern. Roy then asked about its rank. Vios responded that, at the very least, it should be considered a rank D beast. That answer clearly unsettled Roy. Across the world, a neutral organization known as the Guild categorized beasts based on threat level, with rank S at the top and rank G at the bottom. A rank D beast sat far above what normally appeared in this region. In terms Len understood, it was comparable to an early-stage boss from the game. Even 5 average knights working together would struggle to defeat one. Roy questioned why such a creature had appeared here when the strongest beasts in their area were usually only rank F. Vios admitted they were still investigating the cause. To tighten security, they planned to recruit additional knights from nearby villages. However, because of the wide range of dispatches, reinforcements would take about 20 days to arrive. Roy repeated the number in disbelief, and the tension on Lin's mother's face made it clear she understood the risk. Vios apologized and promised they would move as quickly as possible. Roy accepted the situation and stated that he and the others would increase forest patrols in the meantime. Off to the side, Lin kept thinking about the beast's identity. If he could at least figure out its name, his knowledge from the game might help. Before he could dig deeper into that thought, Roy offered the visiting knights a chance to rest, assuming they were exhausted from travel. Vios thanked Roy and accepted the offer without hesitation. Then he turned toward Lin and asked if that kid over there was Sir Roy's son. Roy confirmed it proudly and told Lin to properly greet the captain of knights. Lin froze for a second. Captain of the knights? So this man wasn't just some random knight. He was the top knight in the entire territory. After some time, the men took a break. Drinks came out, food came out, and for a moment it felt like just another normal day. Soon after, the group finished resting and prepared to leave. One of the men casually mentioned that Lin was 10 years old. Then he pointed out that Lin was the same age as the lady. Vios confirmed it, but added something way more interesting. Lin was also a skill bearer. That alone made him special. Vios even said that if the situation were different, he would have tested Lin's sword skills himself. Still, he hoped the kid would stay safe until everything with the beast was over. Roy, on the other hand, looked fired up. He said things were about to get busy starting today. Lin then asked if he could see the wanted notice for the beast. Roy immediately shut that idea down. No need to worry, he said. He once hunted a D-rank beast all by himself anyway. Lin blinked. All by himself? Roy confirmed it like it was just another Tuesday. It happened before Lin was even born. Lin was shook. He always knew his father was strong, but stronger than the combined power of 5 knights? Okay, that explains a lot. That also explains why Lin has literally never beaten him. From that day on, Roy kept coming home from hunts, carrying multiple boars like it was nothing. Lin noticed how big the hunts were getting lately. Roy confirmed it and said he planned to increase the number of prey they caught for the time being. Those small boars around their area had really tasty meat. And because of that, other beasts often came just to eat them too. Lin quickly understood. If those prey disappeared, that dangerous beast wouldn't have any reason to come near their area. So the plan was simple. Reduce the number of easy prey. Search carefully along the animal trails. It didn't guarantee the beast would appear nearby, but it lowered the risk. After receiving the warning from the knights, Roy changed his routine. He used to hunt in the morning. Now, he entered the forest in the afternoon and stayed out until sunset. Meanwhile, back at home, Lin and his father sat together in a huge tub, finally getting a moment to relax. Lin asked if his father thought he'd been overworking himself lately. He also mentioned that maybe it was time he started helping with the hunts. Roy admitted that was true, but said Lin would have to wait until the bee situation calmed down first. He also apologized for not being able to train Lin with the sword lately. Lin understood. Both he and his mother were busy processing all the boars Roy brought home. If they didn't handle the meat quickly, it would go to waste. Sword training had basically taken a back seat for now. Roy thanked him for helping his mother. Then Lin went quiet. A heavy thought crossed his mind. He hoped nothing bad would happen. This peaceful life they'd had for over 10 years, he didn't want to lose it. Days passed. Then came the night of the 10th day. Something felt off. Lin approached his mother and told her that Roy still hadn't returned yet. It was already getting late. His mother agreed and decided she would go check on him. Lin immediately said he was coming too. His mother tried to stop him. It was dark outside and dangerous, but Lin refused to stay behind. There was no way he'd let her go alone. Even if she tried to stop him, he was going. She went silent for a moment, remembering how sometimes she feared the day he might come home badly hurt. Then the two of them stepped outside. The night was pitch black. Lin could barely see anything. He realized this was actually his first time going out at night like this. His mother told him to watch his step. Then she pointed toward a faint light ahead. That was the forest entrance. Torches were placed on the bridge leading there. She asked if he could hear the sound of flowing water. A river separated the forest from their side, and one wrong step could send someone straight into it. Little by little, Lin's eyes started adjusting to the darkness. They reached the bridge. His mother said they couldn't go any farther than this. Beyond that point, beasts roamed freely. Then she noticed something. Across the bridge, beneath a tree, someone was sitting. She recognized him instantly. It was Roy. She called out to him. Roy slowly turned his head back toward them. Lin confirmed it too. It really was his father. Relief hit them both. At least he was alive. But then Lin wondered, why was he sitting there like that? They rushed toward him. As his mother reached him and looked closer, her relief shattered instantly. Roy was badly wounded, covered in blood, one hand clutching his abdomen where a serious injury bled heavily. Milieu urged her husband to steady himself and stay focused. The moment settled for half a second before Lin picked up the sound of footsteps nearby. He raised his torch and aimed the light into a patch of darkness, trying to make out whatever was moving. A boar suddenly burst out of the shadows and charged straight at him. Lin reacted on instinct, catching its mouth with both hands and stopping it just in time. The boar kept pushing forward, its jaws snapping closer as it tried to overpower him. Before it could clamp down, Milieu's mother rushed in and struck the boar across its back. The hit gave Lin just enough space to hold his ground. He signaled for her to run as two more boars appeared nearby, turning the situation into a full mess. Lin struggled at first to keep the first boar from crushing him, but then something shifted. His strength pushed past the limit he expected. He realized he could actually force the boar back. With a sharp motion, Lin shoved the boar aside and sent it crashing into one of the others. The impact threw both of them off balance. Another boar immediately redirected and lunged toward Milieu. Lin stepped in and struck the back of its neck before it could reach her mother. The hit dropped it instantly, catching him off guard with how clean it worked. Before he could process that, another boar rushed his back. He twisted and launched an upward strike that knocked it into the air. The remaining boars hit the ground hard, and the last one still standing decided it wanted no part of this and bolted away. Once the fight settled, Lin stood there realizing he could actually handle them. All the training and skill grinding finally showed results. He had become strong enough to fight back without freezing up. Morning arrived quietly after the chaos. Back at their house, Granny Rig prepared homemade medicine with steady hands and zero panic. She assured the family that things had calmed down for now. Roy's condition had been unstable, but it finally stabilized enough for everyone to breathe again. Relief filled the room. Milieu felt grateful for the help and support that got them through the night. Lin felt the same, especially knowing his father pulled through safely. Even so, something about the situation didn't sit right. Roy shouldn't have been beaten that badly by ordinary weak monsters. That only pointed to one possibility. He must have crossed paths with one of the wanted monsters roaming the forest. Lin couldn't shake the thought that those creatures might still be out there. Reinforcements wouldn't arrive for another 10 days, which left the village exposed longer than anyone liked. If one of those monsters wandered into the village, his mother and everyone else could be in real danger. He figured there had to be something he could do before that happened. Later, Lin crossed the bridge and walked toward the forest edge. Along the path, he spotted the small boar from the previous day lying where it fell. It hadn't been eaten yet, which was surprisingly lucky. Leaving it there any longer might attract stronger monsters. That would only make things worse. He decided to grab it and bring it home before anything else noticed. As he approached the body, a faint white wisp of spirit energy drifted up from the boar and moved toward him. The energy slipped straight into his status screen and then into the bracelet he wore. Lin paused, watching the interface update. Just as expected, both Demon Sword Summoning Technique and Demon Sword of Wood proficiencies went up by 2. The system quietly confirmed the gain, turning an already strange morning into one that somehow counted as productive. Lin figured the energy came from absorbing the magic power stored inside the demon stone within the monster's body. While carrying the boars home, he noticed something odd. Back when he was a kid, the bracelet never absorbed anything like this. Now it only reacted when he personally hunted the monster. It seemed the bracelet had strict rules about who gets the credit. When he returned home, Lin approached his mother and told her he wanted to discuss something important. He explained that starting the next day, he planned to take over his father's duties. The announcement landed heavy. His mother reacted with clear shock and worry. Lin acknowledged the danger right away. Still, he stood firm on what he believed. Being born into the Ashton family meant carrying the responsibility to protect the village, just like his father always had. His mother pointed out the obvious problem. No matter how strong he had become, he was still a child. Lin didn't deny that. He simply pointed out another obvious issue. With his father injured, there was no one else in the village capable of fighting monsters. That left the responsibility sitting squarely on him. The room fell quiet. Lin admitted he knew he was asking for something nearly impossible. Even so, until reinforcements arrived, he asked for permission to protect everyone. His mother had no immediate response. The weight of the decision lingered in the silence. That night, she showed no signs of sleeping. The house stayed still, but her thoughts clearly didn't. By morning, a decision had been made. Lin was allowed to enter the forest, but only under strict conditions. He had to return before dusk every single day. No exceptions. Lin kept her warnings in mind as he prepared to head out. He wasn't allowed to enter the deeper parts of the forest. If he ever lost his way, he could use Tsurugi Rock as a landmark. The name stuck with him. Tsurugi Rock sat about an hour and a half into the forest, a massive sharp stone shaped like a sword planted straight into the ground. As he walked, Lin glanced at the sword he carried and remembered something else he hadn't tested yet. He still hadn't tried the demon sword of Wood's attribute. Back in the game, he recalled a powerful boss that used natural magic with serious efficiency. That memory alone made the ability worth testing. A sudden rustle broke his focus. Something moved in the bushes ahead. A small boar burst out and ran toward him. Just another little boar, still enough to keep things interesting. He quickly thought through how to activate the magic. Then he tried casting Tree Sprout followed by Ivy. The ground responded instantly. A small sprout pushed through the soil, then more followed. Vines grew fast, twisting and tangling together until they wrapped around the boar and pinned it in place. The creature struggled briefly before ending up completely trapped, giving Lin his first clean test of the skill in real time. Lin reacted with pure surprise at how well the magic worked. He looked down at the trapped boar and realized he didn't want to drag things out. There was no reason to make it suffer longer than necessary. He decided to finish it in one clean strike. Even though using natural magic consumed some of his magic power, the skill itself felt simple and efficient. With another little boar already charging in, Lin treated it like a practice session. Each encounter became another chance to test timing and control without wasting the opportunity. After some time passed, the view shifted back to the village. One man watched in disbelief as the results stacked up. On his first day alone, Lin managed to hunt down 12 boars. By the second day, he took down another 12, this time targeting small bears. On the third day, his numbers went even higher. By the fourth and fifth days inside the forest, his hunting pace kept improving. He cleared more boars without running into the wanted monster that still lingered somewhere in the area. Checking his status screen, Lin realized he was getting close to unlocking the demon sword of metal. The progress bar was moving faster than expected. He found himself quietly looking forward to it, treating the unlock like an upcoming game update he actually earned. Later that night, Lin returned home and announced that he was back. The usual routine felt off immediately. Granny Rig turned to his mother and shared that Roy's condition had taken a turn for the worse. She asked Milieu to step outside and wait while she handled the situation. The atmosphere shifted from calm to tense without warning. Lin turned to his mother and asked what happened. She struggled to answer at first, then explained that Roy's condition had started worsening since dusk. They had already used a large amount of their precious medicinal herbs, but his life was still barely holding on. The update hit hard. Lin couldn't understand why it suddenly got worse. His mother admitted she didn't know either, her voice breaking as the uncertainty settled in. Inside the room, Granny Rig noticed the remaining medicinal herb stock running dangerously low. At this rate, everything would be used up by the end of the night. She stepped outside and instructed Milieu to retrieve a specific formula box from her house. Her husband knew where it was kept. Milieu understood right away and moved quickly without hesitation. Lin stood there, tense and restless. Thinking about his father's condition, he turned to Granny Rig and asked if there was anything he could help with. He wondered if the herbs they needed grew somewhere nearby. Granny Rig explained that none of those herbs grew around the area anymore. Long ago, they used to grow near the base of Tsurugi Rock, but they disappeared during a harsh winter decades earlier. The word extinct landed heavily. Lin glanced at the herbs sitting on the table and asked if that was the same one they needed. Granny Rig confirmed it and apologized before telling him to wait outside, while she continued treating his father. The room remained tense with time and resources running low. Lin stepped out of the room with one thing stuck in his head. The herb Granny Rig mentioned was rondo grass. He recognized it instantly. Back when he played the game, it was a standard healing item he used all the time. There was no way he could mistake it. He kept thinking about what Granny Rig said. The herb had supposedly gone extinct. Still, he couldn't fully accept that without seeing it himself. Nighttime made the forest far more dangerous than usual, with threats multiplying the deeper it got into the dark hours. Even so, standing still wasn't an option. If he did nothing, his father wouldn't make it. That thought alone pushed him forward. There was no time left for hesitation. Lin ran straight toward the forest, heading for Tsurugi Rock. He kept moving until the massive stone came into view, its sword-like shape cutting into the night sky. Reaching the base, he immediately searched the area. Just as expected, there were no herbs growing at the foot of the rock. The ground was empty. He paused and looked upward toward the peak. If the herbs weren't below, there was only one other place worth checking. Using natural magic, he made vines grow along the surface of Tsurugi Rock and used them as support to climb. The vines held steady as he moved upward, pulling himself higher without slowing down. After climbing for a while, he noticed unfamiliar patches of grass growing near the top. When he finally reached the peak, the sight confirmed everything. Rondo grass covered the area. The herb hadn't gone extinct after all. Relief hit instantly. He gathered as much rondo grass as he could carry. With this amount, saving his father finally seemed possible. As he collected the herbs, something else caught his attention nearby. Bones were scattered across the peak. They belonged to small bears. The location didn't make sense. Finding remains that high up raised questions. Looking closer, he noticed ornaments mixed in with the bones. The scene gave him a bad feeling he couldn't ignore. Lin climbed back down quickly. The moment he reached the ground and started running back, he encountered 3 little boars. They crossed paths head-on. He struck them down without slowing his pace. Something fell off during the encounter. The boars weren't acting aggressive. They looked like they were trying to run away from something. Then he heard it. Heavy breathing echoed from behind. Lin turned and looked back toward Tsurugi Rock. At the top stood a strange monster watching from above. The realization hit immediately. So that was the wanted monster everyone feared. The creature stood out in the darkness. Its body was white, with 4 tails moving behind it, and 6 eyes fixed forward. A unique D-rank monster. A Chief Wolven. Chief Wolven isn't just another monster roaming around. This beast sits at the very top of D rank. Beat it, and you get a rare drop. Because this thing is a unique monster, the kind players dream about, and also the kind that send them straight back to respawn. Lin knows that too well, which is why he's running for his life. He sprints fast, trying to get distance, then glances back. For a second, it feels like he actually escaped. Yeah, not even close. Out of nowhere, the Chief Wolven charges straight at him like a missile with fur. Lin barely dodges and launches himself onto a nearby tree. The monster instantly follows up with another attack, but Lin slips away again. He's moving well, but in his mind, this is bad. In pure speed, the beast has the advantage. And this isn't just some wild animal. It has a special trait, something dangerous. Before Lin can even finish the thought, the Chief Wolven suddenly vanishes. Gone. No sound. No presence. Just gone. That's when it hits him. Wind magic. By gathering wind around its body, the Chief Wolven can create invisible hands. Those invisible hands can steal items, mess with targets, and of course, hit like a truck. This is not an enemy he should be fighting right now. But running isn't an option either. There's no way this monster is letting him escape. If he wants to survive, he needs a plan, one that the current version of him can actually pull off. His natural magic attack power is still low. Straight up damage won't work. The only real chance is getting close and striking its stomach. But if he messes up even once, game over. Then he notices something. His eyes lock onto the Chief Wolven's legs. There's a wound, and that makes him think of someone. His father. Was that wound caused by him? Did his father fight this monster before? Lin pieces it together. That must be how his father escaped. And maybe the reason this beast hasn't attacked the village yet is because that injury slowed it down. The thought is hard. His father did his duty as a knight. He stood his ground. He protected everyone. So now, Lin can't quit here. The Chief Wolven lets out a massive roar, blasting the area with violent wind. It's like a storm exploding in front of him. But Lin stays calm. He places his hand on the ground and focuses, searching for a way to use nature magic. Vines and leaves burst from the earth, wrapping around him like a shield. For a moment, he's protected. Then the roar shreds through it, tearing the vines apart. But it's enough. The vines manage to tangle around the chief wolven for a split second. That's all Lin needs. He tells himself he just has to stop its movement, even for one moment. Lin jumps in with everything he has and swings at the monster's head. Full power. No hesitation. The hit lands, and his sword shatters. The magic sword of wood breaks instantly. Lin is stunned. Can he resummon it? He tries to call it back, forcing his mana to respond. Meanwhile, the chief wolven prepares a counterattack that looks very ready to end his whole career. Then it happens. The magic sword of wood appears again in his hand. But right after, a sharp pain stabs through his head. His mana is draining fast. Way too fast. Resummoning a broken magic sword is clearly not cheap. And in that tiny moment of distraction, the chief wolven strikes. It lunges and bites straight into his body, grabbing him. As he's caught in its jaws, Lin spots the wound on its leg again. That same injury, the weak point. While being held, he swings and strikes directly at the wound. The hit lands. The chief wolven reacts instantly and throws him away like trash. Lin slams into a tree and drops hard onto the ground. He's down, hurt, breathing heavy. The chief wolven stares at him with pure rage. But Lin isn't done yet. While lying there, he uses nature magic again. Vines and leaves rise once more, surrounding him, protecting him. A fragile defense, but it's all he has as the battle continues. The chief wolven slowly walks toward Lin and starts tearing the vines apart with its teeth. Inside the tangled vines, Lin can feel his body getting weaker. Blood loss is hitting hard. At this rate, he might pass out any second. So he reaches into his bag and pulls out a rondo herb. A healing item. He knows it will work. He knows it can help him survive. But then one thought hits him harder than the pain. His father is dying. Lin freezes. He can't use it. There might not be enough left for his father. Using it now could mean losing him later. And then it hits him. He almost forgot why he came here in the first place. As the chief wolven gets closer and closer, Lin realizes there's still one weapon left for him to use. He looks straight at his status screen, searching for anything that can turn this around. The chief wolven suddenly steps back for a second, and that's all Lin needs. He bursts out of the vines, jumps away, and starts running. His body is badly injured, but he keeps moving anyway. Behind him, the chief wolven growls and gives chase like an angry boss that refuses to let the player escape. Lin glances back and focuses. To stay put for a moment. Suddenly, vines and leaves rise again and tangle the monster once more. But Lin knows the truth. He has almost no mana left. This is his last stretch. He has to hurry. The chief wolven quickly breaks free again and starts moving. Not toward Lin this time, but toward the corpses of the little boars Lin defeated earlier. Lin understands instantly. He just needs 3 more. If he can absorb the power from the magic stones, he can unlock the magic sword of metal. That's the only weapon strong enough to win. Behind him, the chief wolven gets closer and closer. If the magic sword of wood couldn't defeat it, then everything now depends on this final plan. Lin throws his wooden sword toward the chief wolven. The monster dodges easily, but that was never the point. The magic sword of wood suddenly activates, releasing a massive burst of vines that wrap around the chief wolven again, locking it down. Now or never. Lin starts absorbing the power from the magic stones. As the energy flows into him, memories flash through his mind. His family. The reason he's fighting. The reason he has to survive. He has to find a way to save his father. The absorption finishes. Power surges through his body. He realizes there's no way he's losing here. Not after coming this far. Behind him, the chief wolven finally breaks free and charges again. Lin gathers all his remaining strength. Bright energy forms in his hands. This is it. His very last power. As the monster lunges in, Lin drives his blade forward with everything he has and plunges it straight into the chief wolven's mouth. The sword glows with blinding light as it pierces through, from its mouth all the way to its head. The blade bursts through the top of the chief wolven's head. And just like that, the monster falls. The chief wolven is dead. Lin now holds the magic sword of metal. As he stands over the defeated beast, the sword absorbs the monster's magic stone, taking in its power. The battle is finally over. Lin collapses beside the body. His body refuses to move. Every muscle feels shut down. He clutches his bag tightly and thinks about his father and his mother. In the distance, a group of men on horseback approaches. One of them mentions hearing the cry of a powerful beast from this direction. Lin looks toward them as they arrive and discover the fallen monster. They quickly understand what happened. Soon after, they ride straight to the Ashton house. One of the men knocks urgently on the door. Milieu opens it, only to see a group of knights from Clausel. They introduce themselves quickly. There's no time for formal greetings. They need to bring Lin inside immediately. Milieu sees him, badly injured, and is completely shocked. She asks what happened, but the knights explain they only just arrived at the scene. Then one of them shows Lin's bag. He says Lin was holding onto it desperately. Maybe there's something important inside. Milieu opens the bag, and inside she finds it. Rondo grass. The moment she sees it, everything clicks. Lin went out there, fought a monster way above his level, and almost died just to get this herb. For his father. She breaks down crying and hugs him tightly. After that long night, the news spreads across the Leomel territory. A knight rushes in with a report about Lin Ashton. Before he can even finish, Vios is already shocked. Lin Ashton defeated the chief Wolven. Alone, a high-ranking lady nearby hears it and is instantly stunned. A boy, single-handedly defeating a D-rank beast. And he's living inside their territory. Yeah, that kind of news travels fast. 2 months later, Lin checks his status screen to see his progress. He now has a new weapon, the Magic Sword Bandit. But honestly, it looks less like a sword and more like finger armor. Still, a win is a win. While walking through the forest, Lin collects some materials and climbs up a rock. Suddenly, someone calls him Lord Lin. A knight approaches and immediately points out that Lin still isn't fully recovered. They specifically asked him to call them whenever he plans to enter the forest. Lin apologizes. Soon, Lin and the knight ride back together on horseback. Lin admits he survived thanks to them arriving faster than expected. The knight says hearing that makes the rush completely worth it. But he also mentioned something else. Lin's physical strength seriously surprised all of them. Then the knight brings up the bag. Could it be that? Lin confirms it immediately. Yes, those are the treasures hidden by the chief Wolven. Lin explains he wants to sell everything and use the money to help the village. But he's worried about taxes. The knight reassures him. This year's reward is full tax exemption. The chief Wolven's materials are extremely valuable medicinal resources, and the Lord is even buying them above market price. With this, the village could prosper for decades. Lin's reaction is simple. That's awesome. Back at the Ashton house, Sir Roy is finally awake and recovering. He proudly says Lin achieved something incredible. Lin hands the treasures to his father and says it wasn't just him. Sir Roy laughs and points out that Lin is still as selfless as ever. Then he asks if there's anything Lin wants in return. He asks for the beautiful stone his father is holding. He recognizes it immediately, the Salacia Pearl. This one is extraordinarily rare. Lin also shows a bracelet and asks if he can keep that too. Now he can finally wear it openly. Of course he can keep it. Then Sir Roy gently tells Lin that what he did was reckless. He made him worry as a parent. But he also says Lin did well. He risked his life to protect everyone. After all the chaos and danger, a long period of peace finally arrives in their small, nameless village. One day outside, Lin walks around doing chores when he notices something unusual. A girl sits quietly on a rough stone wall, looking out over the valley. She notices him too. Lin wonders who she is. He's sure she's not from their village. She asks if he is Lin Ashton. He confirms it, but hesitates for a second. Something about her feels familiar, like he's seen her somewhere before. Then he realizes something. This moment feels important. A fateful encounter, and the beginning of a brand new story. The girl revealed that she had always wanted to meet Lin. Without wasting a second, she pulled out 2 swords, tossed one onto the ground like this was some kind of official duel, and checked on his injuries like a fighter who just scheduled a rematch before the first one even cooled down. Lin calmly placed the item he was carrying onto the ground. Still confused, he wondered how she even knew him in the first place. Then he picked up the sword she threw down. Instead of answering anything, The girls simply decided that since Lin had recovered, it was time to begin. Lin stood there, completely lost, trying to process what begin even meant in this context. That hit him. She raised her blade and charged. Her attack came fast, sharp, and with zero hesitation. Lin reacted instantly and blocked. The speed alone caught him off guard, and before he could even think, she followed up with a flurry of strikes, one after another. But Lin held his ground. Every strike met his blade. The girl quickly realized she wasn't dealing with an amateur. She acknowledged his skill, noting how well he handled his sword despite being out of practice. Lin was still stuck trying to understand why this sudden combat session even existed. From his perspective, this girl was seriously skilled and seriously unpredictable. She made it clear that the blade had been dulled, meaning this wasn't meant to be lethal. Inside his mind, that didn't make things better. Was this entire match planned from the start? The situation was getting messy. If this kept going, someone would eventually get hurt. So Lin made a decision. He would end it quickly. In one swift motion, the fight flipped. Lin moved in, controlled the distance, and pinned her down before she could react. And suddenly, the confident fighter from seconds ago turned shy. She muttered something softly, completely changing the mood. Lin leaned in slightly, trying to understand what she was saying, but that only made things worse. Realizing how close he was, she reacted loudly in embarrassment. She stood up, regained her composure, and prepared herself again. Lin could hardly believe it. They were actually going for another round. From her side, the result wasn't official yet. She had not accepted defeat. What kind of situation was this? And just as things were about to restart, a group of knights suddenly arrived. One of them urgently stepped in, calling for the princess to stop. The girl reacted with surprise at their appearance, then quickly went silent. She turned back to Lin and asked for a moment to explain. With proper form and grace, she performed a formal curtsy. Then she revealed the real reason for her visit. From her possession, she presented a sealed envelope. Acting as her father's representative, she had come to deliver an official letter to the Ashton family. The message praised the Ashton family for their victory over the Chief Wolven and expressed high expectations for Lin Ashton's future. Lin suddenly froze. A terrible realization hit him like a truck. There was no way, right? Then the girl finally introduced herself. Her name was Lisha Clausel, the Santess of White, the one he will kill in the future. Lin's eyes widened instantly as everything clicked into place. Nearby, Vios respectfully asked the princess why she had gone off alone without informing him. Lisha casually explained that they had simply been taking too long of a break. Meanwhile, Lin's mind was spiraling. He completed the realization. She was the exact same girl he was destined to kill in the world of the legend of 7 heroes. The Santess of White herself, standing right in front of him. Lin had no idea why fate was playing these games. Back at the Ashton house, everything turned into a full-on royal visit. Princess Lisha spoke with Sir Roy. The knights relaxed and had drinks. And Lin found himself sitting across from one of the most important characters in the entire story. Inside his head, Lin was drowning in confusion. How did things end up like this? Nothing made sense anymore. Lisha Clausel, the Santess of White. In the game's story, she never joined the main protagonist's party during event battles, but her strength was on another level. The protagonist couldn't even match her unless they seriously leveled up. She was insanely popular too. Beautiful, kind, powerful, basically perfect. But there was one famous rule about her. She could not be romanced. Ever. Players called her the unconquerable heroine. And now, she was casually drinking tea in his house. While they sat together, Lisha asked if Lin had any plans to visit their territory someday. Lin nearly jumped from the question. Lisha explained that she had personally come all this way to see the person who defeated the Chief Wolven. Their earlier spar confirmed it for her. Lin wasn't just strong, he was brave. She admired how he picked up the sword without hesitation. Inside Lin's mind, he couldn't help but think back to that sudden request for a match. From his perspective, he had just been dragged into chaos. Lin also remembered something important. A station knight once mentioned that this village was within the Clausel frontier. Even so, reaching the main city would take more than 10 days on horseback. He had always believed that staying hidden in this remote village would keep him far away from Lisha, the feudal lord's daughter. And yet, she had traveled all the way here on her own, just to meet him and spar with him. Lisha noticed his troubled expression and asked what was wrong. Lin admitted that she might be overestimating him. He explained that his father had already injured the Chief Wolven before the final fight. The victory wasn't his alone. He also confessed that during their spar, he barely even knew proper sword techniques. As for courage, he didn't think he had as much as she believed. Lisha saw right through that humility. She pointed out that most people would brag non-stop after defeating such a monster. Lin, however, was nothing like the arrogant nobleman who only talked big. That difference was exactly why she wanted him to come to Clausel with her. No matter what. That way, they could also spar whenever they wanted. Lin quietly thought it over. It seemed Lisha truly loved sword fighting. And, judging from earlier, she trained hard. Very hard. Which was exactly why he wanted to stay as far away from her as possible. Lin politely apologized and told her he had no intention of leaving his village. Lisha fell silent for a moment. Then she pointed out that it felt like he had been trying to distance himself from her the entire time. She wondered if he disliked her. Lin quickly clarified that wasn't the case. He explained that leaving would mean abandoning his father, the only person capable of protecting the village. If another monster like the Chief Wolven appeared, the village would stand no chance without him. Lisha understood his reasoning. But in her mind, this wasn't the end. She had no plans of giving up. Morning came, and somehow Lin found himself having a peaceful breakfast with his family and a literal Santess. Just a totally normal morning. Then night fell, and that's when the chaos clock hit midnight again. Lin headed to the stable just to check on the horses, probably hoping for 5 minutes of peace. Instead, a sword suddenly dropped onto the ground right in front of him. Lisha stepped forward from the shadows like this was a scheduled training session. Lin immediately realized what was happening. A post-meal workout. Lisha was pleased he figured it out so fast. She had already secured permission from Weiss and even Lin's parents. No escape routes left. Inside his head, Lin was panicking. She even convinced Weiss. There was truly nowhere left to run. He bent down to pick up the sword, then hesitated. Lisha made it clear that refusing the sword would only result in her extending her stay. That was the worst possible outcome. So Lin picked up the sword and played it off like he totally wanted this. Like he was just in the mood for a late-night workout anyway. Lisha paused for a moment. Then she wondered why Lin kept trying so hard to reject her. It was obvious to her that he had a reason, and she decided she would drag that reason out of him by winning. She made it clear that once she defeated him, he would have to explain everything. And on top of that, he would be coming to Clausel with her. Lin, thinking fast, considered the opposite scenario. What if he won? In that case, Lisha would simply return to the village again. Lin mentally accepted the truth. This was a lose-lose situation. Without warning, Lisha launched forward. Lin was caught off guard, but his body reacted instantly. He blocked her strike, stopping the attack clean. The spar began again under the moonlight, blades moving fast in the quiet stable. Lisha was genuinely surprised. Even when his guard had been down, he still managed to defend perfectly. Lin, trying to keep up, couldn't help but question why she was so determined to beat him in the first place. From her perspective, the answer was simple. She hated losing, and even as the Santess of White, she had no intention of losing to someone her own age. Lin couldn't see how her title had anything to do with this personal rivalry. But to Lisha, it meant everything. As the Santess of White, she had been blessed with exceptional swordsmanship and physical ability. On top of that, she could use sacred magic. With all those advantages, losing to Lin was beyond frustrating. So she made a declaration in her heart. From this moment forward, she was getting serious. And she was absolutely determined to win. Lin quietly noticed something was off. Lisha had suddenly gotten way faster. Way sharper. Almost like she was a completely different person. That's when it clicked. This had to be her sacred magic. It fused white magic, which could heal wounds, with holy magic, which countered curses and toxins. On top of that, it could even buff allies. Lin launched a swift strike to test her. Lisha responded instantly. She leaped onto a nearby tree and came back down to clash blades mid-air. Lin blocked just in time. Inside his thoughts, this was the true skill set of the Santess of White. And honestly, she was seriously strong like this. He wondered why she hadn't used this earlier. Lisha made it simple. If she used it freely, Weiss would absolutely scold her. Lin realized what that meant. She definitely had permission tonight. Weiss spoiled her way too much. If that was the case, then it was only fair. Time for Lin to get serious too. He had already gotten used to her movements. Lisha charged forward again with a direct attack. Lin sidestepped smoothly and countered, lunging forward with his sword drawn. In one clean motion, he thrust the blade straight toward her neck. From his perspective, Lisha was strong. No doubt about that. But compared to his fight against the Chief Wolven, this was still manageable. He kept his sword aimed at her neck. Lisha immediately attempted a counterattack. Lin ducked under it, closed the distance, grabbed her arm, and locked it in place. Then he raised his sword to her neck again. Even then, Lisha refused to stop. She kept attacking relentlessly, but every single strike was blocked. Then, in one decisive move, Lin struck her foot. Lisha instantly lost her balance and fell. Before she could recover, Lin dropped down, placed his blade at her neck, and ended the match. He declared himself the winner. Lisha stared in disbelief. There was no way she wanted to accept that result. She quickly got back on her feet, readying herself again like nothing had happened. Another round, because according to her, she still hadn't lost. Lin could hardly believe what he was hearing. Just as Lin and Lisha were getting ready for yet another round, a sudden clap echoed through the area. Perfect timing. Weiss had arrived. He calmly praised Lin. At such a young age, defeating the young lady while she was using sacred magic was nothing short of unbelievable. It now made perfect sense how Lin managed to defeat the Chief Wolven on his own. With Lord Roy's training and Lin's obvious hard work, reaching this level of strength wasn't luck. Then Weiss shifted his attention to Lisha. He pointed out that she must have fully understood Lin's strength by now. He added that once they returned home, it would be greatly appreciated if she used this defeat as motivation to improve even further. Lisha fell silent for a moment. Then she calmly acknowledged his words. She stepped forward toward Lin and apologized for suddenly barging into his life and dragging him into all these matches. Still, she admitted that it had been a valuable experience for her. Lin returned the sentiment, saying it had been a great experience for him as well. With that, Lisha quietly excused herself and headed off to rest. Weiss then turned to Lin and apologized on Lisha's behalf. He expressed hope that Lin could forgive her enthusiasm. He explained that recently, even his own subordinates, and especially those Lisha's age, had been unable to compete with her. She had started to grow complacent. Weiss then casually mentioned that, if possible, he would have loved to stay a few more days so the two of them could keep sparring. Inside Lin's mind, please do not do that. Thankfully, Weiss continued. They would be leaving the next morning. Lisha herself had negotiated with her father to visit this village and complete several tasks during her journey. Lin reacted with mild surprise. So that was the reason for her visit. Weiss explained that Lisha was traveling around nearby villages on behalf of the Baron. Her role was to calm the unrest caused by recent turmoil and maintain order across the territory. In Lin's thoughts, he couldn't help but be impressed. At her age, she was already acting as a feudal lord's representative. That wasn't something just anyone could do. In the world of the legend of 7 heroes, Lisha excelled in both combat and academics. She ranked at the very top of the academy. A true prodigy. Lin admitted to himself that she could be a bit overwhelming and hard to read. But deep down, she was probably a straightforward and genuinely good person. And then the thought hit him again. One cold, unavoidable fact. He was supposed to kill her someday, and he still couldn't understand how things were supposed to end up that way. Then again, the childhood that Lin and Lisha once shared was never discussed that often within the game's story. Even so, Lin certainly hadn't expected that he would end up meeting her again at such an early point in his life. Morning arrives at Ashton's house. Inside the bedroom, Lisha admits that she wasn't able to sleep at all the previous night. She tells herself that she simply cannot afford to give up here. Soon after, she begins writing a letter, and once finished, she allows Weiss to read it. As he scans the contents, Weiss quickly realizes that the letter is addressed to Lin. Lisha explains that she has been considering handing the letter over before they depart. At the same time, she is also preparing another letter, one meant to express her gratitude toward the Ashton family. Lisha says that she believes her sentiments would be conveyed far better if they were written down. She asks what he thinks about that approach. While reading, Weiss pauses. However, how should I say this? Weiss replies that, in his opinion, the letter reads very much like a love letter. Lisha's eyes widen at once as she echoes the words in disbelief. A love letter? Weiss confirms her suspicion and points out a specific line. The passion I feel for you now surpasses what I felt before we met. Lisha explains that she truly meant every word she wrote. All she intended to say, she clarifies, was that the rumored exceptional boy turned out to be even more outstanding when they met in person. Weiss nods in understanding, but admits that he worries the letter may come across as if it were written by a maiden deeply and desperately in love. Licia's eyes widen again, this time in disbelief, as Weiss continues by pointing out other phrases, and speak to me and tell me not to give up on you. Licia quickly insists that everything written there is simply the truth. Weiss gently tells her that the overall tone still resembles that of a provincial girl who has just witnessed a heroic figure for the first time. Taking the letter back from Weiss' hands, Licia reads through it thoroughly on her own. After a moment of reflection, she comes to the realization that Weiss is right. It truly does read like a love letter. She sits down and begins to wonder why that is. She questions whether this happened because it is her very first time writing a personal letter. In the end, she decides that, regardless of the reason, the letter will simply be disposed of once they leave the village. Before long, they are already preparing to depart. With their first meeting now concluded, one that had been marked by an impressively flashy battle, Licia quietly and meekly leaves the village behind. However, a sudden gust of wind catches her off guard. In that moment, she loses the very letter she meant to throw away. Little did she know that this accident would mark the beginning of their inevitable fate. Our protagonist, Len, is seen walking alone in the forest. As he moves along, he glances at the demon sword of banditry in his possession. Thinking about it, he realizes that he still hasn't properly tested the weapon yet. He figures that this would be a good place to do a bit of practice. Looking up, Len spots a bird perched nearby and decides to try the sword's ability on it. After activating the skill and checking the result, he notices that he has successfully stolen a feather from a bird. His attention then shifts to several other birds resting on a tree. Curious about what exactly is holding them there, he uses the sword once more. This time, instead of a feather, he obtains a piece of paper. Upon closer inspection, he realizes that it's a letter. As he begins to read, it soon dawns on him that it isn't just any ordinary letter. It is unmistakably a love letter. Len begins to wonder who could possibly be trying to invite him a clausal. As he examines the paper more closely, he notices that it is made of high-quality parchment. He figures that if he reads it carefully enough, it might mention something about the writer's swordsmanship. A thought crosses his mind. Could this perhaps be a letter written for him by Licia? And if so, why would it be here of all places? Before he can dwell on the matter any longer, Len suddenly hears the sound of a galloping horse approaching. When he looks up and sees a group of knights coming his way, he quickly realizes that they are not part of Weiss's group. His eyes move toward the crest they bear. Upon closer inspection, he notices that it is different from the crest of Clausel. This leaves Len wondering whether these knights might belong to another domain entirely. The knights soon come to a halt in front of him. One of them addresses Len politely as a young man and asks whether he is a subject of the village governed by the Ashton family. Len confirms that he is, and, in turn, asks who they might be. The knight explains that they have received a message approved by Viscount Gibbons and have come to deliver it. Because of this, he asks Len to guide them to the Ashton family estate. The name Viscount Gibbons lingers in Len's mind. If he recalls correctly, there's a domain located just northeast of their current location, one governed by nobles who have no relation to the Ashton family. Even so, that domain holds a higher rank than that of a mere baron, meaning Len cannot simply ignore their presence. Len responds that he understands and will lead them to his home. The knight pauses and repeats, Your house. As they begin moving, after some time passes, the group finally arrives at Ashton's house. The leader of the knights steps inside to deliver the message directly to Roy Ashton, while Len and the remaining knights from the Baron's side wait outside. Before long, the lead knight emerges from the house once more. He remarks that he hadn't expected him to be Len Ashton himself. Then, he tells Len to rejoice, for the Viscount has a message for him as well. A message? For me, sir? Len asks in surprise. The knight explains that the Viscount holds Len's abilities in very high regard and would like to employ him under his own residence. Hearing this, Len is left visibly stunned. No sooner has the announcement been made than a knight representing the Baron steps forward. He offers an apology and states that their lord was actually the first to extend an invitation to Len. The leader of the visiting knights responds calmly, noting that the speaker must be a representative of the Clausel family. However, he points out that a simple invitation does not mean Lin has already given his response. The knight from the Baron's side replies that the problem exists even before that matter. He firmly states that this village falls under the dominion of the Clausel family, and adds that if anyone wishes to call upon Sir Lin, they must first consult them. Regardless of differences in court rank or faction, he insists, such is the proper courtesy. Surely, he concludes, any servant of the esteemed Viscount Givens would understand that. Lin and the other knights fall into a brief silence. After a moment, the leader of the visiting knights responds calmly, acknowledging the point that was raised. Mounting his horse once more, the leader remarks that they will return again at a later time. With that, the group of knights departs, leaving the estate behind. Inside the house, Roy Ashton carefully reads through the letter they delivered. As he goes over its contents, he explains that the neighboring domain is proposing that this very village be incorporated into the Viscount's territory. Sir Roy then remarks thoughtfully, in other words, the waves of factional dispute have managed to reach even this far. The knight slightly and admits, somewhat ashamed, that Sir Roy is absolutely correct. The term factional dispute lingers in Lin's mind as he reflects inwardly. The Leomel Empire is currently divided into 3 major factions, and every noble within the empire belongs to one of them. The first is the Imperial faction. This group holds deep reverence for the nation's founder, the Lion King, and firmly believes that only the Imperial family possesses the rightful authority to lead the country. The second is known as the Hero faction. It is composed of nobles whose lineages once produced the heroes who defeated the Demon King. Led by the 7 major noble houses, they are often regarded as the central figures within the legend of the 7 heroes. Even Viscount Givens himself belongs to this faction. Many within the Hero faction believe that the authority of the Imperial faction should be restrained in order to make the empire more free and democratic, as well as to reduce disparities in wealth. Finally, there is the Neutral faction. This group is made up largely of pacifists, those who prefer to avoid conflict and instead maintain respect toward both major factions. The Clausel family, led by Baron Clausel, is counted among this Neutral faction. After reading through the letter himself, Lin turns to the knight from the Baron's side and asks whether incorporating a territory into another noble's domain is truly something that can be accomplished so easily. The knight replies that while such occurrences are rare, especially in border villages, they are not impossible. Sir Roy speaks again. He wonders aloud what purpose there could be in taking over a village as small and insignificant as theirs. The knight admits that he cannot say for certain, but suspects that some underlying strategy must be at work. He adds that there is likely a clear motive behind the proposal. Another knight then speaks up, explaining that many factions are currently hoping to draw the Clausel family into their own ranks. Baron Clausel is known to be an excellent noble, and the presence of the Santess of White within their domain only increases their significance. Hearing all of this, Lin feels a sense of unease. Deep down, he has no desire to become entangled in a power struggle filled with political maneuvering and hidden conspiracies. However, because the Ashton family serves the Clausel family, they are not entirely unrelated to the situation. In fact, there is even the possibility that they have already been dragged into something far more serious than they realize. In his thoughts, Lin admits that he does not yet understand Viscount Givens' true intentions. As he continues reading through the letter, one particular detail catches his attention. According to the document, the Viscount intends to incorporate the village and station his own knights there, supposedly to compensate for the area's lack of sufficient military strength. Lin wondered aloud if the phrase lack of military strength was referring to the Chief Wolven incident. Sir Roy responded that it most likely did, but he emphasized that the incident itself had been unusual. He went on to explain that aside from that particular event, there had been no records indicating that the Ashton family lacked military power. The word abnormality lingered in Lin's mind. He recalled hearing from Waisama before that when monsters caused damage within a territory, the feudal lord of that land could be punished for repeatedly dispatching inadequate forces. One of the knights confirmed this, stating that protecting the territory was, after all, the responsibility of its feudal lord. Following that line of thought, Lin reasoned that if this area and the neighboring villages had indeed suffered significant damage, then there might be a possibility that the Clausel family could face punishment. As he spoke, he began forming a conclusion, suggesting that perhaps this was exactly what Viscount Givens was aiming for. Len's father's eyes widened as Len continued explaining his point. He asked Len what he meant by that. Was he suggesting that Viscount Givens was attempting to frame Baron Clausel by taking advantage of the recent disturbances? Len confirmed that this was his suspicion and proceeded to give an example. He suggested that Viscount Givens might pretend to support and protect the accused Baron, only to lure him into the hero faction afterward. Furthermore, if Viscount Givens had been planning this from the very beginning and had been plotting it for some time, even the Chief Wolven incident itself might be connected to him. Sir Roy found this difficult to believe. He remarked that such an idea might be going too far and asked for clarification. Was Len implying that Viscount Givens had deliberately unleashed a monster? Len admitted that he might be reading too deeply into the situation. He acknowledged that he had no concrete evidence to support his theory. Still, he added that everything would make sense if that were indeed the case. Sir Roy replied that he understood Len's reasoning. However, if such a theory were proven true, it could lead to an enormous scandal. Another knight then spoke frankly, saying he was shocked that Len had arrived at such a conclusion so quickly. He revealed the Baron himself had also been concerned about that very possibility. He praised Len, calling him a true intellectual. Len responded modestly, saying that everything he had said was merely speculation. What mattered most, he said, was that they remained vigilant to prevent any unforeseen events from occurring. Sir Roy agreed with Len and remarked that he could not simply remain lying in bed forever. Milieu quickly told Roy not to push himself too hard. Another knight added that they would report the matter to the Baron immediately and urge him to strengthen vigilance. Len agreed and asked them to do so. In Len's inner thoughts, he reflected on how his position might have changed. Still, he found it hard to believe that there was a chance he might have to confront the same hero faction that had once been his allies in the legends of the Seven Heroes. As these thoughts lingered, time gradually passed. The seasons shifted, and autumn eventually gave way to winter. After a successful hunt one day, a knight remarked to Len that it had been another good outing. Len agreed and thanked the knight for his assistance. The village had been able to fully prepare for the coming winter. The knight responded that Len's talent never failed to amaze him. He added that if Len were ever to go to the imperial capital, he would undoubtedly achieve great success. Len replied calmly that he had no intention of leaving the village, as he was the heir of the Ashton family. The knight lamented this and began to cry dramatically. Another knight patted his shoulder and told him that was enough, saying he was troubling Sir Len. Later, back at the Ashton household, Len returned home. As he stepped inside, a familiar voice greeted him. He soon saw Alicia sitting and reading. She informed him that if he was looking for his mother, she was currently with Granny Rig. Len was so surprised that he let out a loud sound. Startled by the sudden noise, Alicia flinched and asked what that was for. She complained that he shouldn't suddenly raise his voice like that. Still in shock, Len asked why Alicia was in the house. Alicia tilted her head and asked what he meant by that. Why wouldn't she be? She then told him that there could only be one reason for her presence. If Len wasn't going to Clausel, she said, then it was only obvious that she would come to him instead. After some time had passed, Alicia demonstrated the shower to Len and asked him if he found it convenient to use. She explained that, as a token of gratitude for their recent sparring match, she had brought one of her magical tools for him. It was a crystal orb capable of producing water, meaning Len would no longer need to travel all the way to the river or the well just to fetch some. He replied that it certainly sounded convenient, but he asked Alicia if such an item wasn't expensive. She said it was an old tool that had stopped working before, and she had only repaired it using her own pocket money. Alicia then added that she wanted to apologize for the incident involving Viscount Givens. She explained that her father had intended to lodge a protest, but dealing with higher-ranking nobles was never simple. She admitted that even as the Santess of White, she did not possess enough influence to overcome the barriers of rank and faction. Len responded quietly, asking if that was truly the case. Alicia went on to explain that throughout history, the so-called Santess, blessed by the chief deity Elfin, had appeared many times. However, unlike the Seven Heroes, none of them had ever defeated a demon lord or accomplished anything particularly significant. Len fell silent. In his mind, he quietly concluded that although Santesses were respected, They were not held in the same regard as the Seven Heroes or the Lion King. Lisha then shifted the topic. Now that Lin had returned, she asked him to guide her to his father. Inside Roy's room, Lisha began healing Sir Roy. Observing the process, Lin recognized it as sacred magic. Sir Roy, already beginning to feel better, expressed his sincere gratitude to Lisha. She simply replied that it was nothing and told him not to mention it. After they stepped outside the room, Lin asked Lisha if, by any chance, she had also treated him the last time she came. Lisha admitted that she had and asked whether he hadn't heard about it. Lin fell silent. In his mind, he apologized, realizing that he had been completely unaware. Later, outside the house, Lin and Lisha began sparring once again. As they exchanged movements, Lin noticed that Lisha's techniques had become noticeably sharper than before. In this short span of time, she had clearly worked very hard. Suddenly, Lisha stumbled. Lin quickly caught her and told her to be careful. Her face flushed slightly as she fell silent, and Lin asked if she was all right. Lisha abruptly moved away from him. With a hint of irritation, she demanded to know how he could move around so much without even losing his breath, and just how much stamina he actually had. Then, just as suddenly, her mood shifted. She told him that, as she had thought, the moments she enjoyed the most were when she was sparring with him. A gentle smile appeared on her face. Lisha then declared that they would spar again tomorrow morning. With determination in her voice, she said that next time, she wouldn't lose. Lisha remained in the village for several more days, and during that time, she and Lin continued to hold several sparring sessions together. Eventually, the day arrived when Lisha had to leave. She bid Lin farewell for the time being. As Lin watched her depart, he found himself thinking that Lisha truly intended to return someday. Even so, he felt that getting too close to her might not be the best idea. Soon after, winter came to an end, and a new event began to unfold during Lin's 11th spring since arriving in this world. On one particular day, Lin and his father were returning home from a hunt. Lin remarked that his father's health seemed to have fully recovered. Sir Roy agreed, saying that it was all thanks to everyone's care and support. However, as they approached their home, they noticed a group of knights standing in front of the house. Lin immediately recognized them as Viscount Given's knights. The leader of the knights spoke first, stating that he had been waiting for Sir Roy Ashton. Sir Roy asked what had brought him here this time. The knight replied that it was, of course, an invitation for them to join the Viscount. He added that the Viscount still held Sir Roy's abilities in very high regard. Furthermore, he mentioned that he had also brought good news for Lin. Standing nearby, Lin began to feel a growing sense of unease. The leader knight then announced that the Viscount was offering to support Lin Ashton's admission into the special class at the prestigious Imperial Cadet Academy. Everyone present was stunned by the announcement. Sir Roy responded by saying that even gaining general admission to the academy was already extremely difficult. He then asked in disbelief if Lin was truly being offered a place in the special class. The leader knight nodded, saying he understood their astonishment. The special class at the Imperial Cadet Academy was exceptional. It accepted only the heirs of the 7 great nobles and heroes, descendants of renowned generals, and a small number of talented individuals who had been raised in the imperial capital since childhood. He then added that Viscount Given served as the Assistant Minister of Justice. For someone in his position, sending a recommendation letter to the academy would be an easy task. Turning to Lin, the knight asked whether he did not wish to develop his talents in the imperial capital. Lin responded calmly and said, "No, thank you." The leader knight stared at him in disbelief and asked what he had just said. Lin repeated that he had no intention of leaving the village. Raising his voice, the knight demanded to know why. He questioned whether Lin did not wish to become a noble and pointed out that Lin could obtain a noble title immediately upon graduating from the academy. In his mind, Lin felt absolutely certain that he did not want to go. The Imperial Cadet Academy was a major setting in the legend of the 7 heroes. Moreover, the special class was where the main characters belonged. It would not be an exaggeration to say that enrolling there would bring Lin dangerously closer to the timeline of the game's future. Lin then apologized and explained that he already felt a strong sense of fulfillment in his daily life within the village. The leader knight could hardly believe what he was hearing and questioned what Lin could possibly be thinking. He then turned to Sir Roy and asked whether he did not want his son to become a noble. Sir Roy responded with an apology. He admitted that he did believe it would be beneficial for Lin to travel to the imperial capital for education and to learn more about the wider recorded world. However, in the end, he said that what mattered most was Lin's own will. Sir Roy added that he also carried the pride of having served the Clausel family for generations. Because of that loyalty, he said he would simply write a formal response to the Viscount and ask the knights to take it back with them when they departed. The leader knight fell silent and slowly closed his eyes. After a brief pause, he said that it was fine and that they would personally deliver Sir Roy's response to the Viscount. Turning his back, the leader knight remarked that this outcome was most unfortunate. With that, Viscount Given's envoys departed from the village. A few days later, under circumstances very different from before, Lady Lisha was brought to the village once again. This time, however, she had fallen ill. Lin welcomed her for what had now become her third visit. Inside the house, Lisha was being carefully treated. Weiss offered an apology, explaining that the young lady had fallen ill about 3 days earlier while they were near another village they had intended to visit. Lin asked what exactly had happened. Weiss explained that it was a peculiar illness that only affected children with exceptionally high levels of magical power. It did not spread to others, and once someone contracted it, they developed a kind of immunity afterward. However, the sudden onset without any warning signs made it particularly troublesome. If the patient developed a high fever and their immune system weakened, there was a risk of complications that could become fatal. Lisha would need to rest for at least 2 to 3 weeks. Lin replied calmly, telling them not to worry and to take as much time as needed until the young lady fully recovered. Eventually, her condition stabilized. Then, 3 days later, a woman accompanying Lady Lisha knocked on her door to inform her that Lin was coming to visit. When Lin entered the room, he immediately noticed that Lisha's cheeks were still slightly red. As soon as he stepped inside, Lisha bowed her head and suddenly apologized. She said that she had come to the village of her own accord, only to fall ill right after arriving. On top of that, she added, Lin had ended up taking care of her. Lin replied gently that it wasn't her fault and that he didn't mind at all. He asked her to raise her head. Lisha shook her head and said that it wasn't all right. She explained that this journey had also been meant to demonstrate their determination to Viscount Gibbons. That was why they had planned to visit more villages than usual. Even if her influence was limited, she had wanted, as the Santess, to show that the Clausel domain stood united through her presence. Yet, she admitted, she now felt deeply frustrated with herself. Lin remained silent. In his thoughts, he reflected that despite her young age, Lisha was already grappling with her position and the weight of her responsibilities. Lisha continued, saying that in the end, she hadn't been able to accomplish anything. She hadn't even managed to defeat Lin once during their sparring. Because of that, she felt like nothing more than an annoying, spoiled child. As things stood, she said, she was only tarnishing the reputation of her late mother. Lin asked her about her mother. Lisha explained that her mother had been overjoyed when she learned that Lisha had been recognized as the Santess of White. Her mother used to say that she would go on to achieve great things, even on the very day she passed away due to illness. Lisha admitted that she had only ever seen her mother's face in portraits and had never heard her voice. Yet whenever she wore her mother's outfit and fought, she felt as though her mother was cheering her on. She added that it was said to be the same outfit her mother had worn when she herself was a child. As Lin listened quietly, he realized that it was a precious memento. He hadn't known that before. Lisha went on to say that she had wanted to live up to everyone's expectations, but in the end, it had all turned out to be in vain. Then she declared that this would be the last time she would come to the village. Lin was stunned. Lisha told him that she had heard he had declined Viscount Gibbons' invitation to enroll in the Imperial Cadet Academy. She said that Lin and his father had gone to great lengths to pledge their loyalty to the Clausel family. Because of that, she felt she could no longer continue acting like a spoiled child. She added that she had already spoken to Weiss about this and was truly sorry for causing Lin's family so much trouble. She sincerely thanked Lin for all the kindness he had shown her. As Lin listened, he thought to himself that Lisha was nothing but pure. If anything, the one carrying secrets here was him. He couldn't help but wonder if this truly was the end. Lisha said that she needed to write a letter to her father. She asked Lin if she could borrow some ink later, explaining that she had run out of it on the way to the village. Lin replied that of course she could. He told her that the stationery was inside the box on his desk, and said that she was free to use it. Lisha repeated the words, his desk, with a hint of confusion. Lin explained that this was actually his room, and that he had simply been in the middle of cleaning the guest room when Lisha arrived earlier. Lisha responded with a quiet, it seemed she had done nothing but cause trouble for him. Lin immediately replied that it wasn't like that at all. A brief silence followed. Then Lin spoke again. He asked if she could perhaps bring a fire-lighting magic tool the next time she came, saying that even a spare one would be fine. Lisha wondered what he meant by that. Lin then explained that he thought having a fire-lighting tool within the domain would be quite convenient. Lisha reminded him that this was supposed to be her last visit. Lin responded calmly, saying that he was referring to the next time she visited again. Lisha told him to listen carefully. She said she had already stated that she would not be coming back anymore because she kept causing him trouble. She also added that, aside from that, Lin had been avoiding her in their sparring sessions. Lin replied that if someone suddenly asked another person to spar without any warning, anyone would naturally be confused. He then asked Lisha if she agreed with that. He continued by saying that if she could simply give him advance notice from now on, then it would be fine. He would be willing to spar with her as long as she was within the village. Lisha was clearly surprised to hear him say that. Lin then added that he did not want her condition to worsen, so he would take his leave for now. He said that they could have a proper conversation once she was feeling better. Left speechless, Lisha watched as Lin exited the room. Outside, Lin found himself wondering what exactly he had just said. Meanwhile, Lisha questioned whether Lin had truly meant what he said. She wondered if she was genuinely welcome to return. As she reflected on this, she realized that her headache had already begun to subside. Slowly getting up, she decided that she needed to write a letter to her father while she still had enough energy. Opening the drawer, she wondered whether the ink was inside the box Lin had mentioned. When she opened it, she found paper inside and picked it up. As she read it, she realized that the writing on the paper was the very letter she had written before. She remembered Weiss once commenting that it looked like a love letter. Her hand began to tremble. She wondered why the letter was in Lin's room. She had thought she had lost it. Where had Lin found it? The realization dawned on her that Lin must have already read the letter. Overcome with emotion, Lisha sank to her knees and began to cry. She insisted aloud that they were mistaken, that the letter wasn't a love letter. She said she had simply been overly enthusiastic when she wrote it. It wasn't as if she had any special feelings for Lin. He was simply strong and had a very likable personality, nothing more. Gradually, she calmed down. Then another thought crossed her mind. Why had Lin kept the letter as if it were something precious? She felt that he should have just thrown it away. Carefully, Lisha placed the letter back inside the box. Quietly, she murmured, asking if he hadn't preferred that she wouldn't grow fond of him. Afterward, she lay down on the bed once more. As she rested, her thoughts returned to Lin, and she found herself wondering what had gone through his mind after reading the letter. The following day, at young Lady Lisha's request, Weiss and the others decided to help with the hunting and carpentry work around the village. Weiss explained to the Ashton family that they felt obligated to lend a hand in return for all the hospitality they had received. Sir Roy agreed and said that he would head into the forest together with Weiss and his group. He then told Lin that he would need him to assist with repairs around the house. Lin agreed, while Milieu mentioned that she would visit Granny Rig to obtain some medicine. One of the knights then asked Lin where the materials for the repairs were located. Lin replied that they were stored in a box near the suspension bridge. With Lisha slowly recovering, everyone believed that she would need only another week to fully recuperate. If everything went according to plan, they would be able to return to Clausel soon. Just as they were thinking this, however, it suddenly began to rain and a thick fog started to form. Because of the sudden change in weather, they decided to take a short break. While resting beneath a tree, Lin suddenly caught a strange scent in the air. He asked the nearby knight if he could smell it too. Lin remarked that it smelled similar to a field after a control burn. The knight replied that he couldn't tell, as the scent of wet vegetation from the rain made it difficult to distinguish anything unusual. Lin began to wonder if the smell was coming from the direction of their house. A moment later, he suddenly broke into a sprint. When he arrived and saw their home, he froze in shock. The house was engulfed in flames. Nearby, he spotted two fallen knights. Looking closer, he noticed that their bodies had been violently bitten apart. He wondered if this had been the work of a monster. Then a chilling realization struck him. Lisha was still inside. Without hesitation, Lin rushed toward the burning house. Inside, he found that all the knights who had remained behind to guard the place had been slain. He wondered if this attack had been anticipated. Had the enemy simply taken advantage of a brief moment of vulnerability? At that moment, a cloaked figure came into view, accompanied by two dragon-like creatures. Lin's eyes widened in shock. He immediately recognized the creatures as mana-eaters, formidable D-rank monsters. Catching sight of Lisha, Lin ran forward in an attempt to save her. The cloaked figure spoke, calmly stating that he must be Lin Ashton. Lin shouted for him to stay away from Lisha. Suddenly, something strange began to happen. Lin felt his body weakening, his vision distorted, and he found himself unable to gather any strength. Before he knew it, he collapsed to his knees. The cloaked man revealed that the cause was an incense. It was powerful enough, he said, to put even a dragon to sleep for several days. Realizing the danger, Lin understood that he was losing consciousness. Before long, everything faded into darkness. After some time, he awoke. His hands and feet were bound tightly, and he found himself in an unfamiliar place. Looking beside him, he saw Lisha lying there as well, also tied up. He called out softly, asking if she was all right. Lisha remained asleep, but Lin felt relieved when he noticed that she was still breathing. The cloaked man spoke again, expressing surprise that Lin had already awakened. He remarked that 4 days of sleep should have been sufficient. He warned Lin to behave himself if he didn't want to be harmed, telling him to endure for just a few more days and not to get any clever ideas. Lin was shocked upon realizing that 4 entire days had passed. He wondered how far they had been taken from the village and questioned the reason for their abduction. In his mind, he concluded that the man must be a beast tamer, someone capable of summoning and controlling monsters. Not only that, but he was powerful enough to command 2 D-rank monsters simultaneously. This was not an opponent Lin could afford to confront recklessly. Turning his gaze toward Lisha, Lin realized that the most pressing issue was her worsening condition. If this continued much longer, her life would be in serious danger. He clenched his resolve. No matter what happened, he could not allow her to die here. Lin silently vowed that he would save her, no matter the cost. Lin had a dream. In that dream, he saw a version of himself, Lin Ashton, who lacked the courage to go out and fetch herbs. Because of that single moment of hesitation, he watched his father fall before his very eyes while fighting Chief Wolven. After his father's death, tragedy did not end there. Their village was soon attacked by an unknown force, and countless lives were lost. In the midst of the chaos, Lin called out desperately for his mother. He apologized again and again, blaming himself. He had promised to protect her, but he failed. Just when everything seemed hopeless, Lisha appeared, accompanied by knights. She descended upon the battlefield like salvation itself, saving the village from destruction. In that moment, she looked nothing less than a true Santess. She healed his mother with gentle light, restoring hope where despair had taken root. Lin could not help but wonder, was this a glimpse of his past? Was this scene somehow connected to the legend of the 7 heroes? The dream faded. Back in the present, Lin found himself still bound in chains. As the carriage continued along the road, he questioned whether their encounter with Lisha had originally been meant to unfold that way. He didn't understand why he had seen such a dream. At the very least, in that version of events, they did not share a hostile relationship. Then a heavier thought surfaced in his mind. Why did he have to take Lisha's life? Was there some deeper reason behind it? His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed the carriage had come to a stop. A hooded figure stepped down from the driver's seat and approached the door. The man opened it briefly, handing them water and food. Lin spoke up, asking the man to at least unlock the chain around his hand. The hooded man scoffed and told him not to be a fool. If Lin wanted it undone, he could sort it out himself. He reminded Lin that he had already provided potions and herbs over the past few days, and he had no intention of spoiling him any further. He also warned Lin that shouting would accomplish nothing. The magic tool he was using ensured that any sound from inside the carriage would reach only him. With that, the hooded man shut the carriage door and returned outside to rest. Inside the dim carriage, Lin quietly opened the water bottle using only his mouth. Carefully, he leaned toward Lisha and poured some water between her lips, making sure she swallowed. Night eventually fell, and silence blanketed the forest. Lin had been waiting for this moment. Summoning the demon sword of metal into his hand, he brought it down against the chain binding him. The blade sliced through the metal with astonishing ease, snapping it apart as if it were nothing. Even Lin was momentarily stunned by its sharpness. Without wasting time, he slid the tip of the sword through the gap in the carriage door and maneuvered it toward the outer lock. With a precise movement, he forced it open. He quickly lifted Lisha into his arms and stepped out, attempting to flee. However, the flying monster perched above noticed their escape. It swooped down at once, landing heavily before them. In response, Lin swung the demon sword of metal and destroyed the carriage entirely. The crash echoed throughout the forest, startling the hooded man awake. Reacting instantly, Lin hurled the metal sword toward the hooded figure. The man narrowly dodged, confusion flashing across his face. Where had Lin obtained such a weapon? As the blade flew past him, a gem loosened from its setting. The sword embedded itself into a nearby tree, the same tree where the horse had been tied. The impact severed the bindings, setting the horse free. Without hesitation, Lin summoned the demon sword of wood. He channeled natural magic toward the approaching monster. Vines and thick grass erupted from the ground, wrapping tightly around the creature and entangling its movements. He extended the same magic toward the hooded man, ensnaring him as well. The hooded figure immediately recognized it. Natural magic. The gem that had come loose was carried through the air by the twisting vines. With a swift motion, Lin retrieved it using his sword. Still holding Lisha securely in his arms, Lin made his move. He leapt onto the freed horse, ready to escape into the darkness of the forest. The hooded man's voice rang out from behind them, declaring that they would not escape so easily. In response, Lin summoned the demon sword of banditry. With a swift motion, he activated its power, stealing the staff straight from the hooded man's grasp. The man froze in confusion, unable to comprehend what had just happened. What kind of ability was that? Meanwhile, the horse beneath Lin struggled and resisted as they rode. It refused to cooperate, clearly agitated by the chaos. Before they could gain much distance, another flying mana eater swooped toward them. As the creature descended, closing in for an attack, the horse suddenly lashed out with a powerful kick, striking the monster midair. Seizing that brief opening, Lin guided the horse forward, and they rode away at full speed. Behind them, the hooded man managed to free himself from the entangling vines. He muttered that Lin's ability was certainly unusual, but unusual or not, he swore he would not allow Lin Ashton to escape. Dark markings appeared along both of his arms. Spreading them wide, he began to chant, "Heed my call, beast of the forest." At once, the forest responded. The once still woods turned violent. From every direction, monsters began to emerge, rushing toward Lin's position. The ground trembled beneath the stampede of creatures. Lin quickly realized what was happening. The hooded man was gathering the forest's monsters and directing them at him. There had to be a limitation. Such a power could not be absolute. Lin concluded that the hooded man could only command beasts weaker than himself. That was his ability. Without hesitation, Lin summoned the demon sword of metal once more. As monsters lunged at them from nearby, he slashed through those within reach, cutting down anything that came too close while urging the horse onward. As they distanced themselves from the main horde, yet another flying mana eater appeared overhead. It unleashed a burst of flame toward them, scorching the path behind. However, Lin maneuvered the horse away just in time, narrowly avoiding the blaze as they continued their desperate escape. Meanwhile, far to the north in the town of Clausel, chaos of a different kind unfolded. Lisha's father, Lizard Clausel, cried out in disbelief upon hearing that his daughter had been kidnapped. Before him, Weiss bowed deeply. He admitted that his failure was unforgivable. Leaving the young lady's side in such grave danger was a mistake he could not excuse. Weiss then requested a little more time. He begged for the chance to rescue the young lady himself. Lizard stood in silence for a moment. Slowly, he closed his eyes and bowed his head. He told Weiss that he was not questioning his loyalty. After all, it had been Lisha's own command that led Weiss to leave her side. However, there was no time to dwell on regret. Lizard declared that they must act immediately. He ordered Weiss to contact the imperial capital at once. Their faction's nobles needed to be informed. And of course, the emperor himself had to be made aware of the incident. Just then, a man hurried into the room. He informed Lord Lizard that urgent visitors had arrived from the imperial capital. Lizard frowned in confusion. Visitors from the capital? He moved to meet them. One of the men stepped forward and formally confirmed his identity. He announced that they had come on behalf of the Minister of Justice. Lizard was now under scrutiny for conspicuous negligence in his administration, an alleged failure that had allowed monster-related harm to spread into the adjacent territory of Viscount Gibbons. The timing could not have been worse. After that long night in the forest, Lynn and Lisha finally managed to escape. For the first time since their capture, they were safe, at least for the moment. Lynn carefully helped Lisha sit beneath a tree so she could rest. From his pouch, he took out a medicinal herb and handed it to her. He warned her that it was quite bitter, but effective in reducing fever. Lisha ate it without complaint, though the bitterness was clearly written across her face. Seeing her reaction, Lynn quickly offered her some water. She accepted it and drank slowly. Their journey did not stop there. Lynn carried Lisha across shallow rivers and guided her through rugged mountain paths. Step by step, they pressed forward, putting more distance between themselves and the forest that had nearly become their grave. After some time, Lynn observed that Lisha's fever had subsided. Lisha agreed, saying she felt much better now. She then asked where he had gotten the herbs. Lynn explained that 3 days earlier, in a village forest they had passed through, he traded some monster materials he had gathered in exchange for the herbs. He also managed to obtain a few travel supplies during that stop. Lisha thanked him sincerely. Lynn brushed it off, telling her not to mention it. As they continued walking, Lisha suddenly realized something. They were nearing the outskirts of Viscount Gibbons' territory. Lynn looked at her, puzzled, and asked how she could tell. Lisha pointed toward the towering range in the distance, the Balder Mountains. Once those peaks came into view, she explained, one could roughly determine their location. From there onward, she could guide them. Lynn gazed at the mountains and muttered, "So that's the Balder Mountains." He couldn't help but wonder if that wasn't the very place where the final battle against the Demon Lord had taken place in the legend of the Seven Heroes. Turning back to Lisha, Lynn asked how many days it would take to reach Clausel from their current position. Lisha estimated about 4 days. However, she added that before anything else, they needed to ensure the safety of Lynn's family. Lynn quickly reassured her. On the day of the attack, his family had not been home. They were likely taking shelter somewhere safe. He was confident they were unharmed, and he urged her not to worry about them. Then Lynn added that this could also be a good opportunity to visit Clausel. He mentioned that he would even meet the Baron. For now, they could do a bit of sightseeing before eventually returning. Lisha looked at him quietly and said, "Thank you." That night, rain poured down over the forest. Seeking shelter, they stopped at a nearby cave. Lynn gathered wood and built a bonfire to keep them warm. From his pack, he took out a bird he had caught earlier. Lisha asked if it was for dinner and wondered how he had managed to catch it. Lynn explained that he had set up a vine trap while the bird was perched on a tree, capturing it without much difficulty. Lisha then asked if he had used the mysterious wooden sword to do so. Lynn confirmed it, but stated that the true nature of its power was a secret. Lisha pouted slightly, saying that was a bit mean. As she checked their belongings, Lisha pulled out the gem they had obtained during their escape. She examined it closely and asked what it was. It looked damaged, possibly broken. She turned to Lynn and asked if it was a magic tool. Lynn explained that he had snatched it while escaping from the beast tamer. Lisha repeated her question, seeking confirmation. Lynn recalled that the beast tamer had mentioned using a magic tool to soundproof the carriage. It was likely this very gem. Lisha studied it thoughtfully and said that it probably was. In a tight situation, it could serve as evidence. The following morning, they resumed their journey. After traveling for some time, they came across a river. It was the perfect place to wash their clothes and take a short rest. Lynn dipped a piece of cloth into the water and gently wiped Lisha's face clean. As he did, Lisha remembered something he had told her earlier, that once she was feeling better, they would finally have a proper conversation. As they rested by the river, Lynn noticed that Lisha's face was still slightly red. He reached out and gently placed his hand on her forehead, checking her temperature. After a moment, he said that her fever was already gone. Lisha immediately blushed even more. Flustered, she snapped that she was perfectly fine and that it was nothing. Yet her thoughts drifted back to what had crossed Lynn's mind after reading her letter. Gathering her courage, Lisha asked if she could ask him something. "You're hiding something from me, aren't you?" she said. Lynn blinked in confusion. Lisha pressed on, asking why he had kept that in his box. Lin grew even more confused and asked what she was referring to. Lisha turned slightly away and told him not to make her spell it out. She assumed he already knew what she meant. Lin, meanwhile, was completely lost. How was he supposed to know which item she was talking about? His thoughts shifted to a past conversation with his mother. She once asked him why he was collecting magic stones. She had even pointed out that emptied magic stones would not fetch a good price. Lin had told her he was not collecting them for money. He simply thought they looked cool, so he kept them. His mother had laughed and said it must be in his blood. His father had been the same way when he was young, always talking about swords and magic stones, even when they were supposed to be spending time together. Back in the present, Lin wondered if Lisha was referring to those magic stones. He did have quite a lot of them in his room. Perhaps, from a girl's perspective, it seemed like a strange hobby. After thinking it through, Lin looked at Lisha and said that ever since that first glance, it had always been on his mind. Lisha froze, her cheeks turning red once more. What exactly was Lin talking about? Lin nodded and said yes. That was the only way he could describe it. Lisha's heart skipped. Feeling flustered, she complained that it was unfair to suddenly say something like that out of the blue. Lin, still completely unaware of the misunderstanding, added that it felt strange to hold on to something just because he was curious, didn't it? Lisha replied that it was not particularly strange. She then said he could just do whatever he wanted with it. Lin interpreted her reaction differently. Maybe she felt uncomfortable because the stones came from inside monsters. He quickly apologized, saying that they simply piqued his interest. Lisha sighed and told him she understood already and that he should stop bringing it up repeatedly. Internally, she wondered how she was even supposed to react if he phrased it that way. Lin looked at her again, and Lisha suddenly said that he should just use her name. Lin tilted his head in confusion. Lisha repeated herself. If he must, then just call her by her name. Lin agreed, though it was clear that the two of them were not on the same page at all. Later, in a nearby village, Lin carried out a dead boar to barter for supplies. But the elderly woman he spoke to did not have any. Lin said that was fine. Even just having food would help them. The old lady then asked where they were headed. Lin replied that they were traveling without a set destination and had not yet decided. The woman nodded and told them that if they continued straight from there, they would eventually reach Clausel. Lin asked if something was happening there. The lady said that there was indeed trouble. According to an adventurer who had recently passed by, the Baron of Clausel would soon be punished. It was bound to become quite eventful. Lisha's eyes widened in shock. She immediately asked what had happened. The old woman admitted she was not certain, but rumors claimed that the Baron of Clausel had instigated monsters against Viscount Given's territory. Upon hearing that, Lin and Lisha quickly prepared to depart. As they rode, Lisha struggled to process the accusation. Her father would never do such a thing. It had to be a fabricated story. It was impossible. No matter how she looked at it, something about the situation felt deeply wrong. Meanwhile, in the northern city of Clausel, a horse carriage rolled into the city, drawing the attention of the townspeople. All eyes turned toward it as it came to a stop. A man stepped out. A knight approached and respectfully welcomed the Viscount, announcing that the moment had arrived. Once they gained control over Clausel's territory, the hero faction's influence would undoubtedly expand. The man was Viscount Givens. With cold determination, he declared that for Leomel to rise from its decay, the Clausels must first be brought down. The two opposing forces stood facing one another inside the trial court, the atmosphere thick with tension. The presiding official declared that, based on the arguments presented, the imperial court would carefully examine the matter in accordance with the great imperial law. He further announced that the final decision would be delivered the following morning, precisely at the same hour today's hearing had begun. On the other side, the Baron spoke grimly, saying that the outcome was already predictable. In his view, within a few days he would be escorted to the imperial city and subjected to punishment. Weiss responded calmly, pointing out that they could still file an appeal against the verdict and bring the case before trial in the imperial city itself. And should that effort fail, they could even petition for a goodwill trial. The Baron, however, dismissed the idea as futile. After seeing the expression on Viscount Given's face, he was certain the man had thoroughly prepared to secure his victory. Given the current circumstances, interference would likely occur even before the trial could properly begin. To the Baron, the entire situation felt strange, even for someone of higher nobility. Gibbon's approach was excessively forceful. Was this truly nothing more than a factional dispute? That night, deep within the forest, Lisha and Lin rested beneath the dark canopy of trees. As Lin lay awake, he wrestled with his thoughts. If events continued down this path, Baron Clausel would be falsely accused and stripped of his authority. Yet, as Lady Lisha had already said, the neutral high-ranking nobles could not be depended upon. Lisha noticed his restlessness and asked softly if he could not sleep. Lin admitted that he could not. He had been thinking, wondering whether there was anything at all he could do. Lisha then suggested that he speak more casually with her. She explained that it would make it easier for her to talk that way as well, and in exchange, she would simply call him Lin. After a brief pause, Lisha stated that they would depart as soon as dawn broke. She confessed that she, too, found it impossible to sleep under such circumstances. They needed to return to Clausel as quickly as possible to testify about the kidnapping. Lin fell silent again, contemplating how many people would even believe their story. Ideally, they needed solid evidence that directly connected the kidnapping to Viscount Gibbons. Lisha agreed. Time was not on their side, and they had to find something, anything, that could serve as proof. When morning finally arrived, they resumed their journey. Lisha mentioned that they were nearly there. Although they had veered considerably from the main road, once they passed through the forest and crossed the hills, Clausel would come into view. Lin asked if that meant they were safe now. Lisha reassured him that it should be so. Knights of House Clausel were likely stationed nearby. However, a horse approached from ahead. As it drew closer, they recognized the rider as a knight serving Viscount Gibbons. The knight expressed relief upon finding them. He claimed that they had been searching for the two of them at Baron Clausel's request. Lisha felt a surge of confusion. Moments later, several more knights emerged, surrounding them. The leading knight insisted that they must leave immediately, stating that they would escort the pair to a secure location. Suspicion quickly took root in both Lin and Lisha. Leaning closer, Lisha whispered to Lin to leave the matter to her, warning that any misstep could put them in danger. Lin quietly replied that he understood, and that he was prepared for whatever might unfold in this situation. The leading knight narrowed his eyes and asked what the two of them were discussing in hushed tones. Lisha answered calmly, saying that whether they would accompany the knights or not would depend entirely on the explanation he was about to provide. Without hesitation, she took out the gem and held it up before him, asking if he recognized it. The knight's eyes widened for the briefest moment before he quickly composed himself, claiming that he did not recognize it and asking what it was supposed to be. Lisha immediately pointed out that his eyebrows had twitched just now. She then explained that the object was a magical device they had taken from the person who kidnapped them. "I see," the knight replied flatly. Lisha observed that he did not appear particularly interested. In response, the knight stated that he would very much like to take the device as evidence. Lisha firmly refused. She declared that she intended to have the Merchants Guild examine it instead. At that, the knight's composure wavered slightly. She elaborated that the Merchants Guild could gather information about the merchant who sold the device or anyone who had previously possessed it. Any detail, no matter how small, could prove useful. The knight objected, saying that such a thing was impossible. Did she even know how many magical devices existed throughout the Leomel Empire? Lisha acknowledged that it was true there were many. However, this one was rare. Someone was bound to know something about it. She added that she personally knew the guild leader in the capital, so surely they would be able to uncover information. The knight grew visibly anxious upon hearing this. Lisha continued, explaining that once they identified its origin, it would become clear whether the device had been stolen by a thief or deliberately given to the kidnappers. If it turned out to be the latter, then regardless of the reason, the person who provided it would have to answer for it in court. The leading knight's nervousness deepened. Lisha added, whoever had given that device was essentially attempting to defame them. The other knights fell silent. After a tense pause, the leading knight stated that this matter was all the more important and politely requested that they entrust the device to him. Lisha called him a fool. She stated clearly that she had no obligation to hand the device over to him. Furthermore, this was within their own territory. Even the village where the kidnapping had occurred fell under their jurisdiction. Frustration and intensity flashed across the knight's face. Lisha then declared that enough was enough. She had no desire to be protected by knights who could not understand reason, and she had no intention of discussing the matter any further. As she and Lin prepared to leave, the leading knight shouted in frustration, insisting that they required an escort. Lisha responded that they did not need one. They were nearly at the city, and she could trust no one but Lin to protect her. The knight's anger finally erupted. He forbade them from leaving. After offering a strained apology, unsheathed his sword. He declared that they must accompany him. In the next instant, he struck. Lisha screamed Lin's name, but Lin calmly told her to leave it to him. At that critical moment, he summoned the demon metal sword and blocked the incoming strike. With swift precision, Lin countered, striking the knight's armored hand. The knight reacted by grabbing Lin's cloak. Lisha thanked him coldly for laying hands on them. As she spoke, she formed holy magic within her palm, adding that they now had yet another reason to bring Viscount Givens before the court. She released the holy magic, and the holy knight was thrown violently from his horse. The leading knight, struggling to his feet, ordered the other knights not to let them escape. Lin responded by summoning the demon sword of wood. Calling upon natural magic, he caused vines and roots to entangle the surrounding knights. Seizing the opportunity, Lisha and Lin ran as fast as they could. Behind them, the leading knight rose once more, cursing angrily. He ordered his men to pursue at once. He needed to report this incident to the Viscount. No matter what it took, they were to capture the two of them alive. Night fell upon them in the middle of the chase. The pursuing knights were drawing closer with every passing second. One of them shouted confidently that Lin and Lisha would not be getting away. No matter how hard they rode, Lin and Lisha could not shake their pursuers. The sound of hooves thundered behind them. Lisha leaned forward and spoke gently to the horse, pleading for just a little more strength. If they could only make it past the hill ahead, they would soon reach areas closer to human settlements. Up ahead, standing atop a tall pillar of rock, a lone figure waited. Lin's eyes widened as he recognized him, the beast tamer. The beast tamer spoke calmly, saying that he had known the two of them would pass through this route. With a spell, the beast tamer manipulated the surrounding rocks, causing them to rise and float into the air. The very terrain shifted, turning hostile. Strange creatures began to appear, mushroom-like beings, grass-like humanoid forms, and swarms of rats. They surrounded Lin and Lisha, trapping them within a living barrier. Lisha quickly told Lin to hand her a sword as well. She said the one he used to start fires would be enough. Behind them, the two pursuing knights suddenly found themselves overwhelmed by a swarm of rats. The creatures devoured them mercilessly. It was terrible timing for the knights. The beast tamer addressed Lin and Lisha coldly. Even if he told them to surrender peacefully, he knew they would refuse. Therefore, he would use force. And if that still failed, he would have no choice but to kill them. Large bees began circling Lin and Lisha. Lin activated natural magic, causing vines and plants to lash out at the bees. At the same time, Lisha struck down the remaining ones with her sword. In the midst of battle, Lin asked if Lisha had regained her strength. Lisha answered confidently that of course she had. She had trained relentlessly to defeat him. Together, they continued cutting down the creatures surrounding them. Even so, Lin could hardly believe the situation they were trapped in. It became painfully clear that escape was impossible unless they defeated the beast tamer himself. Then, without warning, something massive emerged before them. A gigantic worm-like creature rose from the earth, towering over them. Lin immediately summoned the demon sword of metal once again. He aimed the blade directly at the gaping mouth of the giant worm. A concentrated ray of light gathered along the edge of the sword, and with a decisive strike, he unleashed it, cleaving the enormous creature in half. Lisha stared in shock. She realized that Lin had grown stronger as well. On the pillar of rock, the beast tamer rose to his feet and slowly removed his hood. He commented on how impressive it was to send the pressure of a sword strike that far with such precision. At last, the beast tamer revealed his face. Lin's expression froze in disbelief the moment he saw him. Why was he here? He recognized the beast tamer immediately. It was Yurko.